All right, gang. We're getting started here. Thanks everyone for coming. Obviously, day before the competition, kind of stressful, a little hectic. We got briefings this afternoon. It's one more time for you to sit down and listen to someone talk, but taking the time, just really appreciate it.
Team, thank you for your time. We've got a little talk here prepared by Brent and Bukowski. They'll be doing at each of the semifinals. There'll be one of the board members here, myself included, of the PFAA, Professional Fitness Athletes Association.
We're gonna play a little game to start, and the game is, what sport is this? So here is a sport that's been around for a very long time, and in 1916, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I don't need you shouting it out when you figure it out. But what we're showing here is that these are a number of sports that have players' associations, and we as a sport are on a similar trajectory as these sports I'm going to go through. We're just a little earlier in the stages. So this sport was around for hundreds of years. Players' Association started in 1916. That Players' Association organizes the world's largest competitions. They're in charge of broadcasts, and if you're a member of that association, you get a lot of great things. You have a base salary of $500,000 US for the top 125 athletes in the world. There's child care for the players, for the staff, transportation, retirement planning, entrance to approved clubs and courses, and that sport is, change the slide, golf.
Big turning points in their history where they formed essentially a union of players. Tennis being a pretty famous example with, if you've seen the movie Battle of the Sexes, the whole thing that happened with the female league. Basically 85 of the top 100 players said, we're not getting paid enough, it's not fair, we're just gonna make our own league. They all, it was the famous meeting in the car park, they all just decided, let's just go on tour ourselves. They were basically losing money, hired a bus and just to go around playing tennis, but the media kept reporting on all the best players playing their own game while the real tennis league had no stars, made them look very silly. They eventually were forced to come to the female union and basically say, okay, what do you guys need? What do you want? We'll meet your pay demands and we'll reabsorb you. So it's just a powerful thing to have the players who obviously bring a lot to the sport, right? Without the players, without the athletes, there's no sport. To have their say and to have kind of their perspective taken into consideration, which I think CrossFit is famously known for being a bit bullheaded in that way of just kind of our way or the highway. Things have changed in the last few years and not in a small amount due to efforts like the PFAA or the Internal Athlete Council that CrossFit have going as well. So I guess the overarching theme is no one really knows the sport better or what the sport needs better than the people who do it for a living.
And this is? Disco. Tennis and the ATP. So the ATP is, the major tour that we kind of all know and will watch. And before that, it was something else. It was a different name. I can't even remember what it is. It's in history books. But the athletes sort of, took charge and said, we want some change. Next sport and last sport. So this one's the closest to our sport, as it's much more modern. Started in the 1970s. It grew as a kind of a grassroots movement. And this kind of gives it away a little bit there, but grew as a grassroots movement, and it was most closely identified with that one major company, one major brand, and one major series of events, which is Ironman. In 1980, first televised event. In 1989, the ITU was created, and this was their main purpose was we want to get this at the Olympics. And so the PTO is an athlete association, represents a little bit of what we're trying to do here at the PFAA. Ironman in some ways represents and is similar to CrossFit, and then the ITU in some ways is similar to the IF3. Their main goal is to try to get functional fitness to the Olympics. And so this is where we are. This is our timeline, obviously a lot shorter. Those sports were 1916, 1960, and the most recent one there, kind of 1980s. And we started, the first competition was basically the CrossFit Games in 2007, and in only 4 years it was already on TV. In another year, some major competitions started popping up that are still around today, like Wadapalooza. 2017, the IF3 was founded. They're trying to get the functional fitness to the Olympics. 2020, the PFA was founded, and here we are, 2023, the meeting in the beautiful hotel, the Colorado room. So,
yeah, what is the PFAA, the Professional Fitness Athletes Association? What are we trying to do? You know, we're not really at this point as ambitious as a lot of those organizations, but everything has a starting point, right? What those other examples do is they can kind of show us with compelling evidence that there's a lot of power behind a unified voice of athletes. I think, you know, we're a major stakeholder in the space, and things that are in the best interest of the athletes in general are in the best interest of the sport and growth-wise, right? If they can achieve things like that, surely we can achieve at least something smaller or smaller scale as well, right? So why all the effort? We want competitions to improve. I think that's safe to say, everyone here. We want things better. And like, it's not to say that things are terrible or bad, though sometimes they are, frankly. We want what's best. We want better. No one here is trying to like kill CrossFit, right? So often the way this looks is we go compete somewhere, there's hiccups here and there always is, some major, some minor, we all bitch about it together. You know, you air your grievances, and then we go back to the gym, you put your head down, you show up to the next one, and unfortunately often the same mistakes repeat. We know what the sport needs more than a lot of other people. There's also, you know, we coordinate and speak with major organizations that organize competitions, but they're not on the floor a lot of the times, right? And you can program a workout, you can test a workout 9 ways till Sunday, and unpredictable things happen because we're trying to game it, we're trying to gain an advantage, and you know, oftentimes the athlete's eye and vision is better than even the organizers, right? So we see things that they don't, and I think our input is extremely valuable in that respect. So you know, if we're not going to do it, nobody's going to do it for us, right? Next one again. So fortunately, we're actually pretty well positioned already as a sport. We like to complain about little things, but there are some really big things that the sport has done great already. One thing, equality for men and women in our sport has never been something we've had to fight for. It's just existed since the beginning, and that's extremely uncommon. So like, we have to take a minute to be like, hey, that's really, really awesome, right?
Next slide. But we still have ways to go, right? There are things we can improve on. Kind of the main thing that we've been really trying to harp on the last little while is like the competitions. When we actually get on the floor, there's really no rules that dictate what's happening out there, and they sort of change event to event, workout to workout, competition to competition. And this results in a variety of issues, but the two that we're really trying to focus on is fairness and safety, and obviously within that could be a million bullet points. But fairness is just making sure what we want, and I think everyone in this room wants, is every athlete in every lane and every heat has the same opportunity to earn points. And then safety is judges and the athletes when you're on the floor, reducing the risk of those people being harmed.
One of the big ones, the PFAA concerns with a variety of issues, but the biggest ones is competitive fairness. And so obviously a big elephant in the room is like judging consistencies. We can talk about that a bit later, but just general things around fairness, which you'll see would have come up as issues last week, for example, in terms of like the size of lanes for certain skill pieces, you know, the machines they use at different events, and then being compared to the next region, that assault bikes in one region, echo bikes in another. So that's something that the PFA is always concerned with. For example, there has been talks of adding new machines to the open, for example, not just the rower, and giving out feedback on, you know, maybe an assault bike or an echo bike shouldn't be in the open, because you could very easily cut a few fan blades off and it's a totally different competitive field. So things like that have to be considered that sometimes you don't think of, the CrossFit don't think about until they get an outside perspective. And then the other really big one is the competition safety. So something as simple as one of the projects that Brent and Pat have been working on in particular for the last year has been compiling a huge survey of all the shortest and tallest athletes across a multitude of big events, semifinals, games, obviously, but also things like Wodapalooza, Rogue, and figuring out what is the perfect height to put pull-up bars and rings at. There's been several examples of comps that will put the rings really high but not provide the correct rises for athletes, and then other events where the bars are really low, and that obviously inhibits the fairness but also the safety of the athletes.
You know, what the plan right now is we're gonna have a meeting Monday, August 7th in Madison. Like, this meeting here is to kind of get some awareness going, let you guys know we're here, we're working on stuff. Throughout the summer, we're going to be working on planning this meeting in Madison after the games and having some of the top athletes, coaches come there and sort of come to some consensus on what are those things specifically.
Just to give you guys some history and some idea of what we're doing and like who we are and how this has progressed, we kind of started in 2020 when there was a bit of that blackout around the 2020 games. COVID hit, Glassman was booted, there was all kinds of stuff going on, and there was athletes moving to boycott the games, and we kind of all decided like, hey, we need to get aligned, we have a more powerful voice together. Let's round up a bunch of people and just like have a chat and see if we can get a vision of what we want to see moving forward or what kind of change we actually want to see. We have more recently moved our executive group to be, geographically diverse. We've got members from all of the major regions competing throughout the semifinals, members of the men's, women's, age groups, team divisions, all represented in that group of, I think it's 9 people. Some major things that we've seen movement on, at least. I think we all wish there had been more, but a lot of athletes wanted a big priority for people is prize money. Like, how do we affect prize money in a meaningful way? And that's hard. But one thing we pushed for was depth of payouts. So instead of paying only the top 20 at the games, we were getting payouts all the way through 40, and that just helps athletes support the cost of competing at the games at a baseline. Another one was positioning with Noble, who, with total respect to them, they were very open to helping to pay a fraction of jersey sales to athletes back. So you're getting a little bit of a kickback for use of your image and likeness, which we've never seen before in the space either. And those are like financial things. From a safety and fairness perspective, which has been primarily our focus. There's been some big ones, like coaches never used to be allowed at the North Park at the games. They were. They used to give us very limited options in terms of like yoke heights or equipment heights. They have since changed their stance on that to allow a better opportunity for athletes to be successful. They've made changes to their rule book with some of the documents that Brent has provided so that they can enforce things like weight belt width and blah, blah, blah. We've seen some of that happen last weekend. And even just writing, we've written some documents about how to submit a strong appeal, how to bulletproof an online submission video, what to expect around drug testing protocols and things like that they have then provided to athletes through their Hopper email as well.
One of the big things that's happened this year is that a lot of coaches and managers around the world internationally have put in some funds, and they're able to hire a secretary, I guess, a chief operations officer to implement some of these things and actually start working in a full-time role. So hopefully a lot more big things to come. Like I said, back to the examples of tennis, triathlon, and golf, the goals aren't that ambitious yet, but definitely in the next 5, 10, 15 years, the goals have our kind of athlete association be on par with like a players union that can actually have some input and direction in the sport and help curb some of the decisions that CrossFit make that don't always pan out, but also help encourage some of the things that are really good on their behalf. Just giving our input because we know the sport, even better than them potentially, being that we do it.
So what's next? We're going to get your email. I think most of the people in here probably already have your emails, but we have a QR code on the next slide. I'll get you to scan that before you leave, just to put in your email. We're going to send surveys after this semifinal as well to follow up with CrossFit on another call, and then also just to help kind of embolden our internal documents to help make processes for future competitions, and kind of stay tuned. So like I said before, Monday, August 7th, after the games, if you are planning to go to the games, consider looking into flights and stuff where you could meet with us Monday, kind of morning, midday. Would be great if you're able to do that. And then between now and the games, we're going to be releasing a document about every week on competition safety and fairness, or just athlete resources, like here's some sort of general tips and practices to help file your taxes. And for competitions, here's some points tables, scoring tables you can use, so you're not going to a competition and it has a very strange scoring table. Things like that we've kind of been working on internally the past few weeks, and then we're going to be sort of drip feeding that to sort of hopefully continue this momentum from these conversations we're having at this semifinal, Australia, South America.
Yeah, pleasure. Go on.
Appreciate your support, appreciate your time. Yeah, thanks.